So, good afternoon, everyone, and I'm delighted to say that we are joined by Jenny Ervine today. And this is really a follow-on to our webinar that we hosted earlier, Who Owns Cyber Risk? What Business Leaders Need to Know. So, Jenny, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. It's fantastic to see you. And where I'd love to start, Jenny, is would you be able to just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and how it connects to our theme today of cyber risk?
Hi Suzie, thanks very much for hosting this today. I think the discussion on cyber has lots of different kind of opportunities to chat through. My name is Jenny Ervine. I've worked with startups, helping them build products and go to market and raise investment. And also I'm an angel investor, kind of sifting through deal flow, looking at opportunities and investing into startups and being on their board. So I see kind of this issue kind of from both sides as a founder and as an investor. So it's interesting to wear both hats.
Definitely, and it's great to actually have that unique perspective on today's discussion. And that's really where I want to start, Jenny. So you mentioned there about your work with boards. So in your opinion, how early should cyber be on the risk register for boards?
Yeah, I guess from a strategic perspective, we would ask kind of founders to look at all corners of their business. And if you think of that as your department, so sales and marketing, finance, operations, and product development, and quite often cyber kind of touches all those. So as they are starting to kind of get set up early on with the idea, product validation, product build, the sooner they can think of it, the better. And it's really important to kind of build it in, even for example, starting with a new team, starting with a new set of online platforms, whether that be SharePoint or G Drive or those types of things, just kind of having that mindset of who's got access to what as early as possible, then that can help build kind of the foundations for the future. So yeah, it's not an easy thing to do, but just kind of coming back to it maybe on a regular basis, setting out with good intent is kind of a couple of things that I would recommend.
And I like that idea of, setting out with good intent and the forward thinking nature of that and kind of the journey that you'll go on. And on that note, how do we avoid risk being simply delegated away? So it's that idea of, we can start with the best intentions and, we're ticking all the boxes and doing everything that we should, but what is the best way to maintain that, as you kind of continue your journey?
Yeah, as a founder starts to build their team, it's important, I guess, if they can think about it as leading from example. If they put in some good practices, it doesn't have to be a lot of good practice, but even some at the start, and talk about it on a regular basis when they're even right from setting. I suppose quite often we talk about culture, so that stems from communication, that stems from setting by example, kind of setting what the business vision is, and if you can even lead into that, one similar example would even be in health and safety. That's obviously a key priority for some organizations in the manufacturing sector. So if they talk about it and live by it and put it kind of, on the back of every door as kind of a culture, particularly in the office, or talk about it in every meeting, then that's important to kind of build those foundations, lead by example, and be persistent with it in the conversation and in the communication. So as you say, don't let it drift, kind of keep bringing it back up, maybe in weekly, it wouldn't necessarily be weekly, maybe monthly team meetings or quarterly team meetings, just a refresher and kind of keeping a track on how approaching cyber risk and dealing with being proactive and making sure that the company is well looked after.
And I think in our first session, Alison and Claire talked a lot about, best practice and how to influence change and culture and things like that within companies. So if anyone listening to this would like a bit more detail on that, please refer back to the first part of this webinar. Another area or another hat that you wear, Jenny, is of course your role as an investor. And we would love some of your insights on that side of things. So, what does good cyber risk management look like in a startup? So, very much that early stage, starting the journey, and then we'll move on to looking at how that might change as you grow. But in terms of that early startup, how would that look?
Yeah, I mean, I guess as investors, you can, I guess, receive a deck in many different ways. You can receive it in email, you can receive it as part of a platform where you've got founder and investors kind of joining the dots on a platform, or you can even receive it through kind of a verified link. So as investors, even thinking about that and sharing information is important for a founder at the early stage. What information are you sharing and why? And that can come right to commercial kind of confidentiality right across to cyber risk and making sure that people aren't getting access to the information that wouldn't be useful for them, or they could take it in a different light. So thinking right from the pitch deck right through to early stage startup, ranging angel investment, sharing due diligence. Again, a lot of the platforms out there offer document sharing services, and making sure that maybe that's more of a phased approach. So as you go on that journey as a founder, connecting with investors, thinking about your risk profile from a cyber perspective, financial numbers, confidential information, maybe opening up that data box from a due diligence perspective in a phased approach. So you've got more generic information going to more specific as you go through those conversations, because quite often, even raising investment can take a period of time, and you don't want to show everything to everybody up front. So again, just kind of that's kind of thinking from a pitch deck perspective and raising investment. Um, and then underneath that, kind of coming in from a due diligence perspective, just companies will get asked, even at the earliest stage, maybe what training they've had, what kind of accreditations, the likes of Cyber Essentials they might have, and just, I mean, as simple as saying what type of a due diligence data room they have can give you an understanding as to what type of company. One thing I know that the likes of ITUS and Claire would be very keen on is even thinking from a board perspective and an investor perspective, again, sharing the right information to the right people, and maybe only sharing it for a period of time. So
Hmm.
that access perspective as well is another way to kind of think about it. So there's lots of easier things you can do, even as a small startup, at an early stage to kind of allow access to the right
Hmm.
people, if that helps.
Yes, and how would that approach change for a scale up? So say it's a startup looking to secure Series A funding and above, how would that picture differ, I suppose?
Well, you would hope, I guess, at that point that the team's starting to get a bit bigger. You've kind of got maybe some of those department senior management. I think earlier it was sort of touched on who looks after that then. Sometimes it lands with the finance, IT, product development as they would kind of be the lead. But I think it's important again to have across the company in that culture, everybody has a little bit of ownership. Everybody's making sure that they're just double checking the files that they're sending, the access that they're giving. And I think up into Series Seed and Series A due diligence, obviously it becomes there's more information, there's more to share. And again, those types of investors will be asking probably different types of questions. They'll have very specific due diligence questions linked to the product, probably linked to the security, and linked into kind of every part of the business that you'll feel like you have to not all the skeletons in the cupboard, but every corner is going to be poked at that point. So and because it's just a significantly more amount of money, a significant probably same amount of risk, but more money on the table, and the questions just become more detailed. So being prepared early enables you to be able to answer those questions probably better, and putting those practices in place as you go through the different funding raises. Um, you'll be well used to answering those questions for the time you get to Series A, I would imagine.
Mm. And just to close then, Jenny, this is more of a reflection that we'd love to get your perspective on. What's the one mindset shift every business leader needs around cyber?
I think it is that communication. I was part of a company a number of years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. It was a well-known Northern Ireland company, and they had a bit of a cyber issue. They were customer facing, and so they had to resolve the customer facing challenges first, and then work back to us. And I was part of the marketing and sales department, so we were back of house. But the main challenge was we weren't really communicated to. They were so quite rightly concerned about their customers and dealing with that, that the rest of the organization kind of just had to wait and see while they were fighting the fires, and that's quite common. So I think communication up front about setting that culture and everybody being aware of the cyber risks and understanding what to do and who to talk to, but then kind of if something does happen, being transparent, being open, and having that communication. And as a marketing department, I guess we were one of the last ones to come back online, if you know what I mean, onto the systems, and that was fine. We were able to get on and do our job, but don't forget, without some of those back end services like HR, marketing, those front end customers might leave. So I think it's important from a cyber risk perspective to have really good communication just across the board and keep talking about it. I think earlier they mentioned about if something does happen, that also enables people to put their hands up as well. So yeah, one mindset shift for business leaders, communication, and just really get on and do it. Like it's on the to-do list. And just
Absolutely.
kind of chip away at it as well. Be my other
Mm.
key tip of the day.
And when, what a better time than Cybersecurity Awareness Month? We deliberately hosted our first webinar this month, for that reason. So, well, thank you so much, Jenny. Just before we close, where is the best place for people to connect with you?
Yep, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can check me out, Jenny Ervine, Ervine, and yeah, just any of those kind of strategic questions about how to kind of grow and scale a business, I'm happy to answer. We actually had a message from the webinar earlier, and they said they really
Really?
enjoyed it, but it was a little bit scary. But so it's not scary. I think that's the whole purpose of doing these today.
Yeah, it's opening up the conversations and making those connections, with the relevant people. So thank you so much again for your time today, Jenny. So we are going to close this particular session now. We would encourage you all to follow ITUS Protect on LinkedIn, as we will be sharing our upcoming events. We hope to have future webinars, and you can also get the latest news there. So thank you so much, and thanks you again, Jenny, and we'll speak soon.
Cheers.
Thank you.